Thank you very much for all your assistance this morning. Good morning and welcome to the Joint Subcommittee on K-12 Higher Education and CIP. And Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblywoman Carlton.
I am here.
Assemblyman Frierson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt.
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts.
Here.
Senator Canizaro. Senator Kekeffer.
Here.
Senator Ratty.
Here.
Senator Severs-Gansert.
Here.
Chair Dondero Loop.
Here, and please mark Senator Canizaro and Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson present as they arrive. Members, just a reminder to mute yourself when you're not talking, and we will, sorry about that. I just paused my whole brain. So today we are going to be listening to 28 CIP projects. It's a long agenda, including projects for the Department of Administration, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of the Corrections Department, and Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and the Department of Wildlife. We'll also have a presentation from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources on conservation programs recommended to be funded with general obligation bonds. I am not going to go through our standardized remarks on Nellis and the legislative website. I think that we have all got ourselves used to being in this virtual world. So if you do have questions, there is a help link on the Nellis website that you can click on, and it's very clear and user friendly. So this morning, I believe, Mr. Gillis, we have you from the governor's office to present our first piece of information. Am I correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair. Starting
Okay.
video now.
Perfect. And after all the CIP projects have been presented, we'll go to Mr. Lawrence. So go ahead and begin when you are ready.
All right, good. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning again. Morning to members of the committee. For the record, my name is Scott Gillis, Senior Advisor to Governor Sisolak. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to provide some brief background and context on the item that's before the committee today. In his State of the State address, Governor Sisolak outlined his priorities for responding to the COVID-19 public health emergency and for ensuring that Nevada's economic recovery was as strong as possible. One of those priorities discussed that evening was to stand up the stand up the state infrastructure bank with the hope of creating thousands of good-paying jobs for Nevadans while also working to fast-track much-needed infrastructure investments across the state. Excuse me. So item S11 in the CIP budget would allocate $75 million of the state's available general obligation debt affordability for this purpose. It is the governor's ultimate intention to ensure that the state infrastructure bank can serve as a tool to leverage additional capital to fund future investments in things like rural broadband, renewable energy, transportation improvements. For those of you who recall, the state infrastructure bank was authorized by the legislature in 2017, but has never been funded, and at this point is essentially nascent. By using the CIP to formally stand up the bank, we can make sure that the state has the mechanisms in place to accelerate these capital projects, which is ultimately the intention, and taking federal dollars dedicated for infrastructure and then putting Nevadans back to work as quickly as possible. So along with this CIP request that was in the governor's recommended budget, the governor's office has also sponsoring a bill draft request, which was submitted a few weeks ago, which would expand the types of eligible projects that could be financed through the State Infrastructure Bank. Proposes to make various changes, begin to expand eligibility projects, and to make sure that the State Infrastructure Bank can execute its goals as expeditiously and quickly as possible, considering the situation the state is in right now. More details about this proposal will be released in the coming weeks. We're still working on finalizing the language, the BDR language with LCB Legal. But ultimately, it is the goal to make sure that the state has necessary tools to meet our infrastructure needs in the short term and for years to come. I recall testifying on the State Infrastructure Bank when I worked for the city of Reno in 2017. I believe most local governments saw it as a possible, really effective tool going forward. And for reasons I don't need to explain to the committee, it's never been funded to date. So we'd like to take advantage of this situation now and fund it and get the State Infrastructure Bank up and running, and ultimately becoming the tool that it was envisioned to be back in 2017. So assuming the legislature approves this proposal, we anticipate working to establish the State Infrastructure Bank as quickly as possible, along with the consideration of the governor's BDR to make changes to the mechanics of the State Infrastructure Bank. Ultimately, strategic investments in infrastructure help to create real jobs by financially facilitating capital projects for state and local governments through the Infrastructure Bank. We believe we can work to create these high-paying construction and development jobs now in the short term, while also investing in some of the much-needed infrastructure improvements that will help create the foundation for our state's economic expansion, for years to come. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions from the committee. I would also note representatives from the governor's finance office, namely Director Brown, as well as the state treasurer's office, Senior Deputy Treasurer Eric Jimenez, Chief Deputy Treasurer Tara Hagan are on the call to answer more of the technical questions that I'm sure will be asked. They'll be able to much better answer those questions than I. But with that, I'm happy to answer questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillis. Chair Carlton, I believe you had a question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Gillis, nice to see you. Thank you for being here this morning. I guess because we did this in 17 and we've got so many new members and they may not be as familiar with an infrastructure bank as those of us that have kind of watched it from the sidelines. If you could just give an idea of really what the goal actually is of where you really need to get. I think we all want to get to the same place. I just need to figure out how you guys want to get there. And then also if you can share any of the statutory changes that are going to need to be made. If you can't right now, I understand, but if you could give us a heads up on some of them so that we know what to plan for. And then the third part of the question is just basically walk us through how it's going to get set up, how we're going to do the oversight. I know the first step would be your board of directors, how the timing is going to work. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that'll have to be put together before it actually hits the ground running. So if you could walk us through that, that would be very helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. If it's okay with you, I'll take part two of your question and defer to Mr. Jimenez on one and parts of three. But in terms of the BDR
it's perfectly
itself,
fine to phone a friend. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So with respect to the BDR, again, still working through it. Happy to share conceptually what we're trying to accomplish, which is ultimately ensuring that we can expand the types of projects that the State Infrastructure Bank would be able to assist in financing for local and state government. I think my recollection of the discussions in 2017 and the way we read the bill currently, or excuse me, we read the statute currently, is that it's really driven towards transportation projects. It lives in NDOT. It would be staffed generally by NDOT. And what we're looking to create flexibility on is projects other than transportation, whether it be, like I mentioned before, rural broadband or potential renewable energy projects or other utility infrastructure projects that local governments may need. We know local governments across the state have a number of CIP projects that they would like, I assume they would like to get off the ground, but financial challenges obviously get in the way for everybody. So the hope is that the board would ultimately, the State Infrastructure Bank and its board would ultimately be able to be that effective tool for local government to help with these projects. We're looking at revisiting who would sit on the board, likely to have more of a potential renewable energy, conservation, resiliency context for those board members. And those are the primary changes. And with that, I'll defer to Mr. Jimenez on, the intention of how the State Infrastructure Bank would be used going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gillis. And Madam Chair, Eric Jimenez with the Treasurer's Office for the record. I think the purpose of the State Infrastructure Bank, and I think this is really a credit to the foresight of the legislature back in 2017, is that right now we don't have a centralized resource for infrastructure projects across state and local governments. We have Public Works that does its projects, and then our local governments kind of do what they can fund. And there's not that centralized resource to identify buckets of funding, to identify projects that are not just shovel ready, but shovel worthy, which create the best economic development for our state and the most jobs, or meet the demands of a particular region. So we're really thinking about the State Infrastructure Bank holistically and how we can bring all local governments to the table and evaluate the types of projects that we need and determine, what is the best sort of financing mechanisms for those projects. So you may recall, I want to say about a month ago, the governor sent a letter, it was announced in his State of the State, that asked local governments to identify which projects they could accelerate and which projects they needed help on. So we've spent the last month or so, identifying projects from local governments from West Windover to White Pine County to North Las Vegas to get an inventory of projects that range from water and wastewater to transportation and utility infrastructure. And I think our goal here is to make sure that we have all the tools in the toolbox to fund whatever project comes ahead. I would also note that with the changes to the American Rescue Plan that'll be signed by the president, I think today or tomorrow, there's a focus on water, wastewater, broadband infrastructure, and those other types of projects related to work and education. We want to make sure through this request for the CIP and through the governor's bill draft request that we can take advantage of those projects through the American Rescue Plan and then get them off the ground as soon as possible. Madam Chair, I think the third part of your question was kind of a process timeline question. So mechanically under statute, the director of NDOT has to notify the governor and the head of LCB that there is enough money in the bank to stand it up. So what this would be the first step in that process. So once we would theoretically, if the legislature approved it, get that $75 million, we could start the process. From that point, the board of directors could begin meeting, could set bylaws, and could start identifying projects. Our goal is to really get this moving, if we can, this calendar year, because we know that Nevadans need to get back to work as soon as possible. And I think, I hope that answers your question, but if you have anything else, please let me know.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I don't want to monopolize all the time, but if I could briefly follow up with Mr. Jimenez. But when we issue bonding, that's typically in the fall. And I think one of the concerns that I have is, I totally understand shovel-ready projects. Let's get it out there. We need to keep people working. I totally get that. But by the time you get geared up and ready to go, and then you're looking at possibly getting the bonding out in the next year, I would hate to see us lock up any general obligation bonds that could be used for things right away while we're waiting to get this going. So I think once we see the bill draft, we'll get a better idea of where we think that timing needs to be. We would hate, in the past, we've seen money sit and wait to be used, and it could have gone to other things. So I would hate to see the same thing happen with this bonding. And I guess I have one other quick question, and I'm not sure who could answer this one, but when we had original discussions about the infrastructure bank and it was going to be in the Department of Transportation, there was this natural linkage to Public Works. And I'm not sure if that linkage is still going to be there and if these projects will be done through the Public Works realm, how they're going to be done. We know sometimes the devil is really in the detail on these things, and we know there's a lot of folks in Southern Nevada that are going to be looking at these projects. So I just want to make sure if we're obligating the state in general obligation bonds, that we make sure that we've got the correct process in there. And where does Public Works fit into this process?
So Eric Jimenez with the Treasurer's Office, for the record. I would kick the bonding timing to our Chief Deputy, but I think broadly, Madam Chair, I think what we're thinking about is a very collaborative process. So as you see the statute today, I think it was primarily focused in NDOT. We are looking at expanding in the governor's offices the agencies that could provide support. So no one agency is in this alone. We've been having ongoing conversations with Public Works, and they're on the phone, so I'm sure they can answer this as well. The idea is to make sure that the board of directors, as structured and expanded, could fill those roles with staffing needs, and Public Works already has mechanisms in place if we would need the staff or the expertise, if there were a, say, Public Works type project that we could take advantage of. But I do want to make clear for the record, all of these projects are for public purpose, right? So we can't use general obligation bonding for projects that are not for public purposes. And there are also the strings attached for every other types of public work projects, right? The type of labor that needs to be used on that project, the type of wages that are being used on that project as well.
And thank you, Mr. Jimenez. That's kind of where I needed to get. I just wanted to make sure. We've had issues in the past where we've done some projects, and I've driven by the project in one of our remote towns and seen a whole lot of California and Arizona license plates. So thank you for putting that on the record. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield to other members who have questions, and thank you for the latitude.
Thank you very much. Excellent questions. Assemblyman Roberts, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. There was a large relief package passed by Congress yesterday, and I was wondering, we're obligating general fund dollars for this, and I know it's soon. You may not have had a chance to look at it, but it seems like there was a lot of funds available for infrastructure in that package. Would you be able to use some of that instead of general fund dollars?
Through the chair to the Assemblyman, Scott Gillis for the record. I think that remains to be seen. Those are obviously options we're going to seek out as we dig into everything that's in the ARP and how it may be used. I think if there's opportunity to, use, one-shot dollars from that relief package for this goal of ours, we'll obviously entertain that and look at that. We also know, moving past the ARP, which is likely to be signed, I believe, tomorrow. There's also discussion and been in the news, and we've heard, at least preliminarily from the Biden White House, that they are looking to pursue a larger infrastructure package down the road. I don't know if that's the end of this calendar year, if it's 2022. Obviously, those are decisions that'll be made by the Biden administration working with Congress. But ultimately, it's our understanding that there may be some additional dollars down the road on top of the ARP that'll be sent to the states for infrastructure projects. And it's our understanding, at least at this point, temporarily, that the federal government may be looking to usher that money to states through state infrastructure banks. So I think that's one of kind of the tangential benefits of kickstarting the state infrastructure bank now, is having that function, or that tool and everything set up for when and if, obviously, additional federal dollars come for infrastructure projects. But to answer your question, Assemblyman Roberts, we will be looking at what's in the ARP and seeing if it, again, can advance our goals in this space as well.
Thank you very much, and I would appreciate you guys taking a look at that. It looks like you are, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman. I believe Assemblywoman Hadagi had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question. I actually have a ton of questions, but I'll limit it because I know that time is limited. But can you confirm that the use of the state general obligation bonds to support not only the project's associated costs, but for the use of operational costs and to provide loans and financial assistance to government entities is an appropriate and allowable use of bond funds?
Through the chair to the Assemblywoman, I will defer to Chief Deputy Hagan on that question, but the answer is our understanding that it is, but I will let her fill in the details.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Tara Hagan with the Treasurer's Office for the record. Yes, assuming that the legislature would approve the bond issuance for the governor's recommended 75 million, that would be a line item we would anticipate in the CIP bill. And so those general obligation bonds would be used for the operations and capital associated with the bank. And so if you look at today, we do have precedent, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. We issue general obligation bonds that are used for loans to water districts to support clean water initiatives. And that revolving fund, although is self-supporting, it's the same concept in which we're using those general obligation bonds for loans to public entities.
Madam Chair, follow up if I can.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just kind of want to go back to what Mr. Jimenez was talking about. I know he described how now we've never had this a centralized, bank where people can go for dollars, for infrastructure dollars. But what's the benefit? Like, what's the benefit to having the state go to the infrastructure bank for dollars for infrastructure projects as opposed to how we're doing it now, coming through like the CIP budget and also for local governments? Like, local governments obviously have their manner of getting their infrastructure dollars now. What's the benefit of having the local governments come to a state infrastructure bank for infrastructure dollars?
This is Eric Jimenez for the record. Thank you, Assemblywoman, for the question. I think just as someone who's been talking to local governments throughout the pandemic on their infrastructure needs, many of them have indicated that they need help, right? So one, I think everyone's short-staffed at all stages of local government right now. Some of the biggest staff to take cuts are often planning departments and kind of long-term planning. One, the State Infrastructure Bank could kind of serve as a clearinghouse for what projects are out there and what sources of financing can we bring to the table. Is there public financing? Is there private financing that could partner with a local government? And identifying what is the best and most efficient use of those dollars. And then finally, I think the biggest piece in what I hear from local governments every single day is they need a little bit of help on the technical assistance side. So in other state infrastructure banks, in other countries and from other states, primarily California and New Jersey, those infrastructure banks are providing technical assistance to their local governments. So if they need help getting a project off the ground, how does the State Infrastructure Bank kind of come in and maybe do some feasibility work or bring another water project to the table or get a power line built? So I think this is a little bit of a change in the way that we've done things in the past, and I think it's important to note that. But I think it's a really good step in making sure that we're holistically taking a look at all of our infrastructure needs and making sure that we're not just building for the project that we have money for today, but we're also planning for the infrastructure needs in the coming decade.
And if I could, Madam Chair, just one last follow-up.
Please.
And Mr. Jimenez, I see where the benefit to local governments would be, and I'm just trying to understand, like, the state process right now, the state comes to the legislature for dollars. And so would this circumvent them having to come to the legislature for dollars for projects? They'll go directly to the bank?
I would also defer to some of the other folks on the phone, but I don't think the intention here is to circumvent that process, Assemblywoman. I think it is to support that process. And I think right now, are we funding projects through one-shots from the CIP when we could be financing them through a different sort of debt structure through the infrastructure bank? So I think, one, we need to understand a holistic view of what projects are out there. And some might make sense to go through the traditional CIP project. It's really just going to depend on what projects are out there. And we won't know that until we get this board set up and the initial capitalization into the bank.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Keffer, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Might be for Mr. Gillis. I'm not sure exactly who the correct person would be, but based on the proposed changes that you're going to be making in your bill draft request, do you anticipate that charter schools would be eligible for loans for capital costs through the infrastructure bank?
Through the chair to Senator Keffer, off the top of my head, I don't know the eligibility for charter schools within the existing state infrastructure bank statutory scheme, but that's something I'm happy to look at, and as we work through the language of the bill and work with you on if that's something the legislature would like to see happen.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Create that eligibility.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions here? I don't think I see any.
Madam Chair, if I could just do a quick clarification.
Absolutely, please.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think I want to go back to the operations. The one thing that I learned, and if you'd have ever told me years ago that I would understand bonding and CIPs, I probably would have tried to sell you some swampland. But putting operations into bonding, I just feel like it's putting like paychecks into the actual long-term mortgage on something. And I guess I really want to understand the thought process behind that. And it may be legal, but does it really work when there might be other opportunities to actually do the operational money? We typically don't put operational money into long-term indebtedness. So I just have some concerns about that, especially when there might be other opportunities out there to fund this more appropriately in a regular general budget sort of way.
Good morning, Tara Hagan again for the record. That's an excellent point. And I think obviously there are some legal allowances from a de minimis standpoint when you issue tax exempt bonds. However, when we go to issue these bonds and bring them forward to the State Board of Finance, that's part of what we will look at in terms of what's the best financing associated with this, but really looking at that operational expenditures to be more of a de minimis. And if you look at some agencies today do utilize bond proceeds, that de minimis amount that's allowable in the Internal Revenue Service Code, to be able to fund certain positions that can help track the bond expenditures, et cetera. So this is something that the state does, but you're absolutely right. We always want to make sure that we're matching that financing to the life of the asset and ensuring that, we look at all those ramifications and determine at the time and bring forward to the Board of Finance that best mechanism for that financing.
And I appreciate that. That was a very good answer. Made it very understandable. I guess just as a legislature, we always want to make sure that, ultimately, we end up having the responsibility of figuring out how to close all these budgets and get it all done. And when things are being decided outside of that world, it makes us want to ask a lot more questions so that we know that the state will be on the hook for these. And ultimately, the dollars that go to fulfill those bonds will come from someplace, because it's one pie and it just depends on how we slice it. So thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the clarification.
Thank you. Senator Ratty, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Chair. I'm I'm wondering, so first of all, 100% agree with the line of questioning and not about not financing operations with debt. But I'm curious about, is there a fund balance? And so we're seeding it and we're putting a chunk of money in. And then does that money all get sort of expended, or is there some sort of rolling level of dollars that are always in the account that we're earning interest on? So sort of the reverse side of the question is there going to be some earnings, or some of the other things we've done, like some of the scholarship programs, are there fees that we collect because we're contracting out with providers? Is there any income generation that then could also help to pay for operations?
Good morning, Tara Hagan again. I'll take the sort of the first shot at this. In terms of other states' infrastructure banks, they are set up as revolving funds. So that's pretty typical, in which that the repayment of the loan with the interest provides those funds to continue that. So, obviously that would be up to the board of directors in terms of loans that are made to public entities. Is that a zero interest, or is it below market rate? But ideally, as the fund matures and as the board continues on historically, they are meant to be revolving funds that can not only regenerate and continue the loans, but sometimes to issue their own revenue bonds, depending on that generation of income.
I'm satisfied with that, and I'm willing to wait for the bill hearing to kind of flesh out all the details.
Okay, thank you. I just have one quick question, and I don't know if I missed this but I'd just like to confirm how many other states do something like this, and has it been successful? And what have they done this process with? Is it the same type of public works process?
So this is Eric Jimenez with the Treasurer's Office, for the record, Madam Chair. I think I'll take this one. Historically, right now, I want to say there's about a dozen or so state infrastructure banks. There are about 3 that are doing it well. And what we've done over the last 12 months is really take a hard look at, and some of you that are on the finance committees know that we did a study to understand how we could best stand up the state infrastructure bank, which we're happy to share with the committee if that's helpful. One of the things that we learned is some state infrastructure banks, like ours is currently set up, are very limiting in terms of the types of projects that they can finance, and that in turn limits the type of capital that they can attract, both public and private. So that's really the genesis behind the governor's bill draft. And I think, if Mr. Gillis wants to add, I think that'd be appropriate. But we're looking to finance as many types of projects as we possibly can. So anything from social infrastructure, so education and healthcare, to water projects and renewable energy. That's really going to be the key to how we can make this successful.
£Thank you, Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you, Eric, Mr. Jimenez, appreciate that. Not a whole lot to add. I think Eric covered it. Other than to say, we look forward to, coordinating with the legislature. I think this is one of those areas where we all have the same goal, and is to figure out a way to get more infrastructure projects in the pipeline, not only for the benefit of the projects, but the jobs that they create in our communities. So we are happy to work with you, Senator Ratty, and others as we work through the mechanics of the proposed bill.
Thank you very much. I believe Assemblyman Hafen has a question. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a very brief question. I'm just curious on the bonds, what the interest rate is looking like currently.
Tara Hagan again for the record. So we did a general obligation bond issuance back in the fall, and I believe that the true total interest cost at the time was around 1.85%.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I think I have no more questions. So I thank you for that information, and we look forward to the bill hearing. And we will move forward to the Department of Health and Human Services, CIP Budget 21 M02.
Good morning, this is Ward Patrick. Good morning, Ward Patrick, Administrator for the State Public Works Division.
Mr. Patrick, I'm sorry, good morning. And just as a reminder, we only need to cover those highlighted areas. We probably won't have time to do the entire presentation. So if you'd like to focus on those ones that we've identified, that would be great.
We appreciate it. We'll be hitting the highlighted areas.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. With me today, this is Ward Patrick, Administrator of State Public Works Division. And with me, I have Kent Lefevre, our Deputy Administrator, as well as Brian Walker, our Chief of Planning. The affected projects by the budget reductions we'd like to go over first. And as you can see, we've the presentations today have covered the Infrastructure and Economic Development Program, number S11. And then, as you introduced, and thank you for that, the Health and Human Services Project M02, followed by Department of Corrections, CNR, as well as Wildlife, MDOW. So moving to the affected, those affected by the prior budget reductions. You see a list of projects here. And so we'd like to point out that many of these are shovel ready and the designs have been progressing. So we have first here the Caliente Youth Center flooring project, which is a shovel ready project. It had reductions in the SB1 during the special session. And that's similar throughout this list. The plumbing fixture and water control renovations at Southern Desert Housing Units 1 through 4 is a shovel ready project, as well as the surveillance system replacement at the Casa Grande Transitional Housing Facility that includes the offices of the Director of the Department of Corrections. Final project for corrections that it was subject to reductions is the yard fencing at Southern Desert and High Desert State Prisons. And that has progressed to the schematic design level, and Corrections is looking forward to that project getting back online with the approval of the CIP. Then we have the heavy equipment shop and renovation in Elko for Conservation and Natural Resources. This is an NDF facility. And the comfort station replacement at Valley of Fire State Park was canceled. And so there's been really no progress on the design on that. And then finally for CNR, we have the park facilities and ADA upgrades at Fort Churchill, which is a shovel ready project. So these projects are the ones affected by budget reductions, but you can see even though they were affected by budget reductions, we've been keeping them moving. The final project that was affected is the construction of the water wells and water systems at various fish hatchery sites. Just want to give some perspective to that. So as you see these projects rolling through our presentation today, you'll see that although they were affected by budget reductions, many of them have been progressing. So for Health and Human Services, you know, this committee is used to seeing 6, 8, or 10 small projects, fixing plumbing and heating and air conditioning, architectural improvements, security improvements. Well, this session, we've been meeting with our board regularly and come up with a concept that those statewide projects that we do that are roofing and ADA, life safety, all those have been very successful, and we've developed administrative policies and procedures. So the thought was maybe we could do these HHS projects in a similar fashion. That's been very warmly received by the entire executive branch. HHS is very tickled about this concept. Been discussed with the governor's finance office, and in fact, the governor's office added 10 projects after our board's recommendation to this program. So this is a program where we're asking for direct funding for what we call priority 1 projects. Those are planned to be funded within our estimates. And then we're listing priority 2 projects. And so when funding becomes available through savings on these priority 1 projects, we plan to immediately initiate the priority 2 projects. So this provides a great benefit in the utilization of CIP funding. Is the funding that is saved would then go right to work after it's been identified as being saved. And so won't be waiting for the 2023 CIP, or given that this is 4-year money, some of this funding may have been sitting in the wings for 2 sessions till the 2025 CIP. So these are some of the primary benefits of the program. But again, implementing these projects earlier avoids future increased cost impacts, avoids system failures, and it decreases the cost of if there's a possibility that emergency project would need to be implemented. So what we've seen over the last 3 or so years is that we've got a laundry list of emergency projects that happen to have been priority 2, many of those priority 2 projects in our process. We've replaced a boiler at the NAMS campus, the Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services campuses, on building 1. We've replaced a air handler at that same facility, but in building 8A. Again, these are failures with 24/7 cared for individuals with HHS that need to have, heat and cooling in the appropriate times of year. So these are projects that fell into the emergency process. And so we had to relocate these individuals and inconvenience the programs and get these projects done in a big hurry. And that tends to be where some of the absolute best design decisions can't be made because of availability of equipment in the vendor community. Other similar projects is at the Mint here in town, the Nevada State Museum, the chiller was replaced. At Southern Nevada Veterans Home, at the last IFC, we got permission to start a chiller project, which if you could imagine the inconvenience of the 90-bed Southern Nevada State Veterans Home. At Ely State Prison, housing unit 7 and 8, as well as housing unit 12, had to be shut down due to leaks in the medium temperature hot water loop. And so there's a follow-on project to that to improve the whole loop here. So there's various projects that have been priority 2 projects, but were not able to be funded. And so you'll see in our book here that we've listed 16 priority 2 projects. So if there's savings in these first 19 projects, we'd be able to initiate some of those and hopefully get those completed within this 4-year period of the sunset money. So I would offer that these projects are all seen as very straightforward projects. You've seen them all here, and we appreciate that. And so we'd like to make an offer that in compliance with a recent audit, our division's category 14 expenditures, we're providing quarterly reports to the governor and the legislature to create transparency. And so as a result of 21-M02 being approved, the Public Works could provide quarterly reports on this as well. In conclusion, on just the process of M02 being a big a conglomerate of many projects, the benefits are cost savings, improved utilization of CIP funding, as well as direct agency benefits. So I've got, there's 19 projects on this list, and I would just highlight a few of those. And so these would be more of the larger, more critical projects. And so these projects are located at NAMS campus, Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health. And you can see some of the various sub-projects are kind of listed here in a little bit of an archaic manner, but we'll go through those. So this is it in the Sparks campus. Then the next campus that has work is the Caliente Youth Center. So there's 4 projects there that affect both the housing, administration building, as well as the school and even the irrigation well. Then the next set of projects is at Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. 5 projects here. So this is off the West Charleston, near on what we call the West Charleston campus. And so you see here Southern Nevada Child and Adolescent Services, Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health, Desert Regional Center, and the Ross and Neal Hospital, which, you know, some of us might think, boy, that's a new facility. And as it turns out, you know, you're here a little while and these various facilities are just continuing to age. And so I think this would be the first project that we've done at the Ross and Neal project, and it relates to security as opposed to deferred maintenance. Next campus that we'll be going through here in a quick manner would be the Northern Nevada Child and Adolescent Services Project campus. So you see to the right of that is the Chancellor's office near the UNR campus, and to the left of that is the Early Intervention Services building of HHS. And I think the final campus might be here is Caliente. This is the Nevada Youth Training Center. And so this is the function here is very similar to the Caliente Youth Center. And so you can see various projects there. This campus was initiated in the early 60s, and there were various phases that brought these buildings into being throughout that decade, early part of that decade. And of course, many of the engineering systems of all these structures age and need to be replaced in approximately 20-year intervals. And so we've been bringing projects to the legislature for all these campuses for any number of years. And so here's a campus that is now 60 years old. And so we're looking at iterations of replacing these various pieces of equipment. And it's just more of those projects. We're trying to decrease the backlog of deferred maintenance. So here's the list of projects. There's 19 priority 1 projects here. And as I mentioned before, there's 16 priority 2 projects listed in our CIP book. And so just to go through here a little bit, you'll see the first M021 project, call that the first project, is a security type project and a safety project. We see in here some electrical projects. So project number 2 is electrical upgrade at the Caliente Youth Center. Although many think the electrical systems just sit there and don't require maintenance, when in fact metals fatigue, power systems vibrate, connections, and all these things need to be refurbished, not necessarily on a 20-year cycle, but on a much longer cycle. And so some of these electrical projects are much needed. Again, the Caliente Youth Center was designed and built in the 60s. You look at the project number 4, here's building 1 at the NAMS campus. This is a building built in 1920. There's many of the states facilities are aging and need this work. And so with that, I would ask if there are any questions regarding this overall program or any of the specific projects.
I appreciate that, Mr. Patrick. I was going to ask you if we could do that. So I appreciate that very much. Senator Ratty, I believe you had some questions.
I do. Thank you so much. So, so it sounds like we've done this before in another, kind of more overarching for the whole state, but I do think we want to just make sure that we get some things on the record. So you said that there were some cost savings as you were sort of wrapping it up, that that's one of the reasons we would do this. But I don't think that we can actually see the cost savings because the 19 projects budgeted individually are 19 projects budgeted individually, and we don't see where, as you put them all together, there's cost savings. So if you could just talk a little bit more about where those cost savings come from.
Certainly, when we budget for our projects, we budget to work to create each individual project to be a successful project. And so having them stand on themselves. And so what we've offered in some responses in the questions and answers back to the Legislative Council Bureau is that this project should have a reduced contingency in it. So right now, the project that you're seeing has a 15% contingency, and we would offer to reduce that contingency to 10% in line with, and that would be some savings. And so that's a real monetary savings that would be achieved. So the other savings that we're considering here is that there will be economies of scale. So as we progress through these projects, you can see there's a number of projects at each campus, and there's a number of projects that are the same project type. So by grouping those, we've obtained some economies of scale. Again, the savings will come from reducing the number of emergency projects. And also, these projects will get done sooner, so it would avoid inflation and other cost impacts. So the question, it's a very good question, alludes to, where do we see that savings? The savings, as we're proposing this project, is going to be seen by priority 2 projects being implemented. So these would be projects, if not approved, these priority 2 projects would just be on a list that is hoping to get done somewhere else. Now these projects are on a list of projects in the wings that can be implemented. And so savings that comes from these first 19 projects will be utilized to complete some of the projects in the lower 16 projects on the list. And that's where that savings would go.
And that's really the big difference in this process is kind of how the money cascades or waterfalls when you do have savings. So in a normal CIP, you might have a project that would go over, then it would have to tap into contingency. You might have a project that would come in under, then that money would just roll back to the general fund. Is that correct in the current way of doing these projects?
Yes, thank you. So certainly, if a project goes up.
Mr. Patrick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but could you identify yourself each time you speak for broadcasting purposes? Thank you.
Sorry about that, and thank you. Ward Patrick for the record. So if a project goes over, it's due to a high bid, or in our planning, we see that it needs additional funding. What we would wait for is to look for a project that has savings and then come to IFC. And so we've provided a 2-page list that summarizes that to the Legislative Council Bureau. And so there's a laundry list of projects that we could go over that demonstrates here's projects that have that are short of funding, and here's projects that have excess funding. And so those projects that are all authorized and intended to be fully funded go to IFC. And so then there's the true benefit here is being able to do some of these priority 2 projects. So all these priority 2 projects are much needed by the agency, and this enables some of them to get done when the savings accrues on the above projects.
And then I'm kind of interested in how, if you could pull this apart, how does it benefit Public Works? And then how does it benefit DHHS?
Thank you. Well, and I would even add that it may benefit the legislature. So we've got this 2-page list of agenda items that we're moving money from savings on a toilet project into a HVAC project that's short on funding. And so there would be fewer IFC agenda items, but the agency would also not see that lag in the process. So once a project has some savings, money can be moved into that project that is short funding. And so putting all these projects in one project decreases the amount of delays when there's 2 projects, one is high and one is low. We can still continue by running those together. So what this does for the agency is it allows these projects to get completed more timely. And so again, many of these projects have been on what we call the deferred maintenance list for a decade. We've been receiving support, as I mentioned before, from our board and from the legislature to find a way to get some of this deferred maintenance done. And so this is a effective way of getting it done, which benefits the agency and getting it done timely.
And they're smaller maintenance projects, not large capital projects that would fall into this pool generally.
Yeah, so as I pointed out on the first page, there's a couple larger projects which I wanted to make sure you were aware of. Some of these electrical projects, one is $4.5 million, others $3 million, and the balance of projects are less than $2 million, and many of them are less than $1 million. So the intent is just that these straightforward projects can be implemented. And this is very similar to what we would call the MiniCIP that's in the Buildings and Grounds budget. And so Buildings and Grounds within the Department of Administration and the Public Works Division has many projects in there, and there ends up being some savings on those. And so, again, as I mentioned, due to a recent audit, we've been providing quarterly reports when savings has occurred, and we add other much needed maintenance projects to the list, and we go and get it done. And so we think that concept that is existing in the B&G budget, which has quarterly reports offered to create some transparency, is good. We think that all these projects that have been in the CIP since the 1990s, like the statewide roofing program, is handled the same way. The statewide roofing program was developed because there were a lot of leaking roofs in the 80s and the early 90s. So it's like, how can we make sure that many agencies don't have leaky roofs? And so the idea was we would combine all those projects into a single project that enabled funding to get done, so projects wouldn't be slowed down due to shortage in funding, and then also projects would be expedited in that there's probably 2 projects that could be completed.
Chair, if I could, just one last, I think,
Yes.
important detail.
And Mr. Patrick, I feel like the teacher at the front of the class, but please remember to identify yourself. We can see you and broadcasting is listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mr. Patrick, just one last clarifying question. Even though you have this authority to do them all together, would you still track the expenses on each project individually?
Correct. Thank you, Ward Patrick, for the record. And so Smart 21 is coming out to replace our current accounting system, and we've been investing an immense amount of time into coordinating that conversion from our current project accounting system into the Smart 21 system. And that allows, on a formal basis, at the highest level, which is the master accounting system of the state, to have sub-projects. And so certainly we would track all these projects as a sub-project, so stand on their own. There would be the authority to move money between the sub-projects to complete the work. And so I would offer that on our statewide projects, we've been handling these sub-projects within the using spreadsheets here. And so each spreadsheet is for each sub-project internally. And so that would be more formalized to the Smart 21 system for project accounting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson, did you have a question?
I appreciate that. I think the only thing that really was kind of left to address was about what challenges the State Public Works Division experienced with being required to bring forward the project scope changes and funding transfers to the Interim Finance Committee for approval as required by NRS 341 and in the CIP legislation, and how this recommendation would address those challenges.
Yeah, the challenges are not immense to go to the legislature to do the IFC agenda items and get permission to move money from a project that is has excess funds into a project that is needs funding. So those challenges are not large in that regard. The challenges that we see that this provides the biggest benefit is there's savings in some of these projects. And if they were separate, they would be what we might call in shoeboxes. All this savings is sitting there waiting for it to sunset, in some cases 4 years. And so priority 2 projects could then be approved. So the challenge is more, I think, for HHS in having to wait for the next funding cycle to get more projects completed. And so we would like to think that putting these priority 2 projects on this list, like is done for all statewide programs, it enables them to be completed because they've been presented in a formal manner through the CIP process and heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I have a question, and I was wondering if you could tell us the need for the increased forensic bed capacity to serve the state's forensic population and to maintain that compliance with the terms set forth by the Burnside consent decree.
Thank you, Chair Ward Patrick. For the record, I would love to defer that question to the Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, good morning. This is Lisa Sherrick, Administrator for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. I appreciate the question. I am not sure how many people on this committee are aware that our forensic services were under a consent decree over the past several years, which required us to ensure individuals that needed to be determined if they're competent to stand trial and work on restoration, et cetera, were able to get into our forensic facilities in a timely manner. So while we have maintained compliance with that consent decree, which was up December 21st of 2020, we want to make sure that we continue to abide by those requirements, which was ensuring that folks got in within 7 days. We currently are always at almost full capacity, and there are, with COVID, we've also had, we've had to ensure that we can address quarantine units and being able to maintain the safety and protection from COVID within all of our hospitals, quite frankly, but also including Lakes Crossing and our Stein Hospital, which is part of Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. I don't know if that answers your question, but because we are always at that high capacity, there could be really any moment that we could push over that and then be back in the same situation of another consent decree and potential fines that could be levied against the state.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I think Senator Keffer has a question as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I wanted to just follow up on that a little bit. So the consent decree has expired? Is that what you said, Ms. Sherrick?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
I'm sorry, did you say that the consent decree has expired?
Lisa Sherrick for the record, correct. We had it through December 21st of 2020, which was the date that we had to maintain compliance, which we met. And so it is currently no longer in existence. However, we still are wanting to ensure that we're abiding by the requirements that we were under.
So when you say we'd be subject to fines or something like that, that would require a whole new, dispute with either the courts or the local governments or whoever it might be to stimulate that. There's nothing that exists going forward that makes us subject to automatic fines if for some reason we can't put someone in within 30 days or whatever the terms of the consent decree were, right?
Lisa Sherrick, for the record, that is correct. There would have to be a new lawsuit and go through that process. But there have been other states in the nation that have experienced going through the process and ended up having fines that could be the result of not complying with getting folks seen timely.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do so. We added 78 beds to our forensic capacity very recently. This is another 30 beds, right? Something to that effect. Do you think that this will get us to where we need to be for the foreseeable future in terms of capacity? Or are you going to be coming forward at some point to build another forensic facility?
Lisa Sherrick, for the record. Great question. I do know several years ago there was the intent to put forward building a new forensic hospital. While I would like to say 100% that this will keep us where we need to be with the numbers requiring the service. I really can't provide any assurances on that. And given the fact that I think we've piecemealed together, some of these units and old hospitals to meet these demands. I do foresee at some point in the future, the state will have to really look at the need to build from the ground up a fully functional forensic hospital that really would meet future demands.
I appreciate that. I mean, we are sort of putting it, using old facilities, right? That's what we did with Stein. That's what we're doing with Russ or with Dean Townsend. Just making do with what we got rather than putting something together that's designed for this purpose. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thanks for the leeway, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I don't believe I see any additional questions. So with that, we will move on to, I believe next on our list is Department of Corrections.
Thank you. Chair Patrick, for the record, Kent Lefevre will be presenting Department of Corrections projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kent Lefevre. I serve as the Deputy Administrator at the department. There are 17 Department of Corrections projects to present today. These projects are maintenance related. They include piping replacements, generator and electrical replacements, culinary equipment, CCTV, sewerage replacements, boiler and air handler replacements. So I would like to highlight 5 of these projects for the committee. The first project is MO3, replacing the domestic water and sanitary sewer at Northern Nevada Correctional Center. This project will replace the domestic water lines and sewer lines for the campus. The existing pipes have been in the ground since the facility was constructed back in the 60s. Over 30,000 linear feet of piping will be affected by this project. And this project will also include a headworks upgrade. This project is budgeted at $13.8 million and is 100% state funded. The next project I'd like to highlight is 21MO4, which is the replacement of domestic and hot water piping at Ely State Prison. This project will complete the design and construction of the domestic hot water piping for housing units 2 through 8. This piping is internal to the buildings, and the copper piping, is frequently leaks and is pitted out. This project will replace the old piping with the new material. The budget for this project is $10.1 million and is 100% state funded. This project, I will also say that this project is a continuation of 19M11, which was to perform the same scope of work on Housing Unit 1 at the prison. Next project I'd like to draw your attention to is MO7, which is the underground piping for Ely State Prison. This is a companion project to the one that I just discussed, replacing underground piping and underground heating piping as a continuation of the project 19M09. The water that is in these pipes is roughly 300-degree water and is stepped down twice before it's used for domestic purposes. Whenever a leak is discovered, it's usually in the form of a geyser. This particular project is budgeted at $8.3 million and is a shovel-ready project. Next project I'd like to draw to your attention is M13, the electrical distribution upgrades for Northern Nevada Correctional Center. This project will replace the electrical systems for the entire campus. The electrical distribution system is original to the facility and is over 50 years old. The new electrical equipment will replace the old equipment with more efficient systems. This is a continuation of planning project 19P06. The budget for this project is $19.6 million. And again, this is a shovel-ready project and a continuation of a planning project, which we've just completed, 19P06. The last project I'd like to highlight for the committee is the central plant renovation at High Desert State Prison. This project will replace boilers, chillers at the facility, and the existing boilers and chillers are 20 years old and have experienced serious maintenance issues in the last few years. The planning for this project is currently being done under 19P07. The budget for this project is $10.4 million and is 100% state funded. We'd be happy to talk about any of the other corrections projects or answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that information. And I'll start with Assemblywoman Howdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just have a couple of questions, but my first one's going to be on the plumbing fixture and water control renovations at the Southern Desert Correctional Center. I want to talk about the cost of the project, because I know in 2017 it was approved for 1.6 million, and then during the 31st special session, we had to roll that back. And so now you're coming back and asking for that same renovation at double the cost. So it was originally approved for 1.6 million, the same project, and now it's costing 3.2 million. Could you walk me through why the double cost, or the increase in cost at twice cost?
Camel Fever for the record. Thank you for the question. Yes, that project was budgeted at that amount in the 19, and the project was designed and built and bid. And after it was bid, the lowest responsive bid came in at double our budget. So we're actually basing this project on real live bidding information. And so that's why the increase is seen in this project.
Okay. And then my last couple of questions. Can you walk me through what factors are applied by the State Public Works Division in its cost estimating process above and beyond like the traditional cost allowances and construction contingency?
Warren Patrick, for the record, I believe the question was what processes are used? To clarify?
Yes, what factors do you guys take into account?
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Yep. So we've had, I think you're referring to, there's a couple projects that we've been talking with your Legislative Council Bureau staff. There's a couple projects that we, along the way, we've seen that we needed to add some additional factors beyond. There's just two projects, and I'd like to go through those. And they're both corrections projects, Nevada Department of Corrections projects. And so we've got these, a project that we're planning on. It's in the CIP here for the 2021 is an air handling unit at Housing Unit 4 in Northern Nevada Correctional Center. And so we added an additional.
And also that one, and also the underground piping replacement at Ely State Prison.
Ward Patrick, for the record, will certainly cover both of those. And so regarding the ceiling project, we're proceeding with the various efforts in the planning for this air handling unit project, which it's foreseen that some of these projects are, only on the roof and a minor amount of work within the building. That particular project, Corrections has been struggling with that project that building and have actually put in a series of temporary ductwork in there. And the ultimate solution there is going to be removing the ceilings in this facility. And so looking at a standard facility, a standard office building, you'd think ceilings are these little pieces of T-bar and 2x4 fiber ceiling. Well, in this facility, it's structural steel with what in the industry we call expanded metal, which is almost like sheet metal, but it's more effective, efficient, and lighter. But this is covered with stucco in that facility. And so we did our estimates originally, and then as the CIP process goes, which it starts basically in April, so almost 2 years ago, almost a year ago, we were reviewing a project that has a very similar ceiling, which is a Lakes Crossing facility. We were replacing a lot of ductwork. So that project actually went to IFC to get further funding, and change orders for the ceiling alone were 50% of all the change orders on the project. So because we saw that just in the recent times, we chose to add another factor to accommodate the complexity of the ceiling system in housing unit 4 for this air handler replacement. Now looking at the other project that has the trenching items on it, we, as we mentioned, we did an emergency project at Ely State Prison for housing unit 7 and 8, as well as housing unit 12. And so that was authorized in the 19 CIP as emergency repairs, and it was authorized in the order of magnitude of $400,000. And pricing that came in on that to get those units back up and available for Department of Corrections was more. And so it's in the order of pushing $600,000. So due to those two reasons of practical experience, sorry for the long answer, but for those two reasons, based on our practical and recent experience with identical issues, we've chosen to increase those prices as a factor because of practical experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick, and no need to apologize. I think we'd rather have more information than not enough. And then just my last request would be if you could provide us a list of all projects in the recommended 2021 CIP that include cost increase factors that are not identified in the cost estimate sheets provided in the CIP book. And not so much of a question, more of a request.
Yes, we'll do that. Ward Patrick, for the record, thank you for the request.
Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman. I don't think I see any additional questions from anyone. So with that, we can move on to Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, please.
Thank you. Kent Lefevre for the record. For the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, I have a few projects to bring to your attention. CO1 is the heavy equipment repair shop and renovation at the Nevada Division of Forestry. This is located in Elko, as the diagram depicts. This project is to complete the design and construction of 7,200 square foot repair shop and a remodel of the existing shop. This is a continuation of Project 19P08. The budget for this project is set at $5.5 million and is 100% state funded. The next project we'd like to highlight is CO9, which is Comfort Station's replacement at the Valley of Fire State Park. This project will replace 6 comfort stations at the Valley of Fire State Park. Those comfort stations are located throughout the park. This is a continuation of Project 19M50 And the budget for this project is $816,000 with a 50-50 split between federal and state funding. The next project, we have a few M projects for this department. M34 is the repair of the Comstock Historic Office, which will repair some windows and doors on the facility. M45 is a project for the Fort Churchill State Park. And this project will make, there's a picture of it. This project will make repairs to the park facilities and improve ADA access. This project will also update the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing systems that serve the buildings. The budget for this project is $1.2 million, and it is a 50-50 match with federal funding and state funding. Next project I'd like to point out is Miller Point, and this is at the Cathedral Gorge State Park over by Panaca. This project will replace the stairs and the safety railings for this area of Miller Point. I don't know if you guys have been there before, but it's very picturesque, beautiful spot, and it will improve safety, railings, and safety railings for the project and for metal stairs replacement. The project for this, the budget for this project is $1.8 million, and it is a 50-50 split with federal and state funding. We'd be happy to answer any questions for the department. Conservation and Natural Resources.
Thank you very much. Would you just quickly tell us what the Division of Forestry project, what, including any cost savings anticipated from reducing or eliminating the outsource of work on heavy equipment, can you just kind of tell us the benefits there?
Patrick, for the record, we would defer that question to possibly Casey or maybe John Christopherson could answer that one. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, this is John Christopherson, Deputy Administrator with the Nevada Division of Forestry. We thank you for the question. So beyond the cost savings that would flow to the state from doing the maintenance on our vehicles ourselves rather than outsourcing them due to space and facility constraints associated with our current facility, the new facility would create a safer environment in which our staff mechanics would be able to work. Currently, the space constraints are such that the new types of equipment that are used in wildland fire suppression and other operations no longer fit inside the existing shop. And so a lot of that work, if it's not outsourced, is actually conducted outdoors and subject to the vagaries of the weather. Those are not really safe environments in which our staff would be working. So that would be benefits that would accrue to the state and our staff in terms of safety and health and welfare for our staff working on the equipment. Additionally, the shop facilities that we're currently using will be renovated and used as storage facilities for equipment that's currently stored outdoors. And so the kind of the wear and tear, if you will, that occurs to that equipment when it's not kept under secure, safe environments outside of the weather will help prevent just routine maintenance needs that occurs as a result of just the vagaries of the weather and the impacts to that equipment. I think the other upgrades to some of those facilities will help bring us into legal compliance with the ADA American Disabilities Act, the other required or recommended facility improvements that came out of a facilities condition analysis back in, I don't know when that was, 2014, I believe, was when those recommendations were made. So the renovations and upgrades to the existing shop will all occur as part of this project and bring that facility into compliance. If there's any other specific questions about benefits accruing from the project, we'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that information. I sort of know firsthand some of this forestry, and thank you very much for all you do in our out back areas. So thank you very much. I believe Senator Keffer might have a question.
Madam Chair, I think that was still from the last series of questions I asked at the HHS. So I think I'm good on these. All questions for Department of Wildlife.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, then we will move into the Department of Wildlife if no one else has any questions. If I've missed you, holler at me. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Council Fever for the record. I have a few projects to present for the Department of Wildlife. The first one is CO4 Cave Creek Dam Rehabilitation. And just so you can orient yourself, Cave Creek is located southeast of Ely town site, about 10 or 15 miles. The next slide, this is an aerial view of the actual lake recreation area. And these slides indicate the state of the level of the lake at this time. The lake is being kept artificially low because of the concerns for the safety of the dam. Cave Creek is classified as a high hazard dam by the Nevada Division of Water Resources. And does not meet current dam standards, dam safety standards. So this project is to address those issues with a $9.5 million project that is federally funded and state funded. Federal grant funding at $6.8 million and state funding at $2.2 million. The next project I would like to point out is the Department of Wildlife maintenance projects. There are 3 maintenance projects for the department: constructing water wells and water systems at various fish hatchery sites, M20 HVAC system renovation at the Elko office, and M53 excuse me, HVAC system installation at the Elko warehouse. We'd be happy to talk about any of these in detail at the pleasure of the chair.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Assemblywoman Gorlow, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, it took a moment to get me off of mute. Thank you very much. I do have a quick question regarding the funding. And according to my notes, there's about $6.9 million in federal funds for this project. So what is the status of the application for the federal funding to support the project? And when will the Department of Wildlife receive confirmation on approval?
Again, Ward Patrick for the record. We would like to phone a friend of ours over in the Department of Wildlife for that one. Thank you.
This is Jack Robb, Deputy Director of Nevada Department of Wildlife. The federal funds are a process that takes quite a while, and sometimes that gets us into extending that 3-year period that gets the state into arbitrage. So we're in process. This is a vital project for the Department of Wildlife. This dam does need some serious work. It's vital to the economics of White Pine County also. But we'd like to ensure that all the funds are there, but we're going to need cooperators, state parks, Department of Conservation, Natural Resources, and others to ensure that this project can go forward. And depending on the bid price, we're going to do everything we can to ensure the safety and get that back into the use that it historically has had. But it's a big lift for a small agency as ours.
Thank you very much for that information.
Thank you very much. Senator Ratty, did you have a question?
I'm just curious about the status and the timeline for completion of the preliminary design and environmental permitting. Where are we in the process?
Warren Patrick for the record. Yes, so Department of Wildlife has initiated the design process and permitting. And this project is intended to complete that process. And so what'll be driving the schedule, of course, is, which happens on some of these types of projects, like for instance, the Marlette Dam, the funding process is what is driving the schedule. And so that is yet to be determined on this dam over in Cave Lake State Park as well. So we cannot commit to an overall schedule, but it's depending, largely depending on funding. Thank you.
Any additional questions on this?
Sure.
Is that Senator Keykefer?
It is.
Please,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
appreciate it. If I was hoping Mr. Robb might be able to expand a little bit on what he means by they need cooperation and whether they're receiving it at this point to try to draw down these federal funds.
Jack Robb, Deputy Director of the Department of Wildlife. We're looking at multiple funds, boating access funds, other sportsman dollars. This dam is located right in the middle of the Cave Lake State Park. How the Department of Wildlife owns the dam and only the dam in the middle of the state park, I wish I knew better the history of the thought process behind that, but the only portion of that park the department owns is the dam, and we need to work with everybody, locals, DCNR, state parks, to ensure we have the funding to complete this whole project. If we don't get the funding, the lake is going to have to remain at a drawn down level that was depicted in a prior photo. We will work on the outlet of the dam to ensure we have a properly working low level outlet. The only way we were able to draw it down to its current level is to install an emergency siphon. And the emergency siphon doesn't meet the requirements for the safety aspect of being able to get all the water out of that facility. That emergency siphon draws it down to, the siphon is working at its maximum capacity at this point at the level it's at. So we may have to stage this project in depending on where we get the cooperation going forward.
All right, so to be clear, how many different sources of funding make up the federal share of this project? It sounds like it's quite a few.
Jack Robb, Deputy Director of the Department of Wildlife, for the record. There would be some boating access fees. There could be some fishing type fees associated with it. We would look at our Q1 allocation. We've looked at federal funds on this for high hazard dams, but those funds come in very limited amounts, a couple $100,000 for a $10 million project. But when you take that money, you commit yourself to a 50-year life of the dam. And we don't want to commit ourselves to such an extended period of time on that type of infrastructure.
So our funding mix shows like almost $7 million in federal funds. You're talking primarily about, those are state fee revenues, right? we have boating fees and fishing fees. That's state generated revenue. Our funding mix shows almost $6.9 million in federal revenue for this project.
Jack Rock for the record. It would be a combination of state and federal. You need the state match to get those federal dollars. Even though it's associated with federal dollars, you do need the state match to get those. And those come through license revenue that help out in fishing and then boating access fees also.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. This is I love this state park. And I just discovered it a few years ago. So we need to get the lake full. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rob. Appreciate your time and expertise for what you do. Is there any additional questions? I don't believe I see any. So with that, we'll move forward and we'll work on Department of Conservation and Natural Resources bond programs.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jim Lawrence, and I am the Deputy Director, or one of the Deputy Directors for the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. With your permission, I would like to share my screen and then give you a brief presentation on our 4 conservation bond programs within DCNR. Thank you for the patience. Can you all see my, share my screen all right and see the presentation? Good, so that's yes.
You can. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Again, for the record, Jim Lawrence, I'm one of the Deputy Directors here at the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I've been asked to give a brief presentation on our 4 programs that are basically funded through the sale of general obligation bonds. These programs are all very different in the sense that they're administered by different agencies within our department. They have very unique purposes and processes attached to them. But I would also say that they do have a very commonality in the fact that, you know, all of these projects have the threat of protecting the state's natural conservation resources as well as our historic and cultural resources. They also have a commonality to them that many of these projects and programs leverage state investment against federal investment or local government investment and sometimes private sector investments. There's also a thread within these programs and projects that there's a public health and safety element to them in protecting our water resources and taking care of our forests. Many of our projects and programs, they also enhance communities and they enhance the quality of life for the residents of those communities. And then I would also add that they create jobs in the development of these projects and in the implementation of these projects. And then lastly, I would say that all of these programs, one of the common threads is the state or the legislative body or the executive branch through the years have found these programs important enough to the people of Nevada to put them in the general obligation bond, basically competition. These don't have dedicated revenue streams, but they have been found to be important enough over the years to be in Nevada law and to have the funding source of competing with the general obligation bonds under the affordability cap. I'm going to go quickly through these 4 programs. There's no real reason to the order of these programs. They're just in chronological order. So the first program that I'd like to talk about quickly is the Water Capital Grant Program, and that's administered by our Division of Environmental Protection. And this is a program that provides grants to water purveyors for various purposes, largely to help with drinking water deficiencies, basically to bring the water systems into compliance with federal water standards or local health standards. serves with water conservation, irrigation efficiencies, and also groundwater protection. This program was established in 1991, so it's been around for a long time and it's been very successful. The process for which this works, the water purveyors that are seeking funding and the projects, they must be on the drinking water priority list. Now, that priority list is kept and maintained by the Division of Environmental Protection. That priority list of projects is reviewed, and then the grants are finally awarded by the Board for Financing Water Projects. In the current recommended budget, there is $8 million for this program. Now, this slide is basically the list of the priority projects. Now, I want to tell you that this is not a static list. This is a list that is maintained, but new projects do come on board. So this is really where it is at this point in time, and it is the rationale for the $8 million in the budget. Now, you can see that there's 7 different projects here, and they all have various purposes, but they are really regarding drinking water standards, distribution, and conservation. One of the takeaways here is again, the leverage component. So if you look at the total project cost, there's $18 million in project cost there. What the division and the board have worked with is they match up the funding with the ability for the water purveyor to, what they can afford and what they can bring to the table. So with this list, the grant portion, or what's coming from the state's general obligation bonds, is 45% of the total project cost of all of these projects. Again, this is not a static list because things do change and projects do get added, particularly once bond funds become available. But this is the process on how the grants are awarded. Second program I'd like to talk about is the Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation Grant Program. This is a program that's administered by our State Historic Preservation Office. This is a program that was established in 1993. And these are grants that are used, as it says, to preserve and protect historic buildings, structures, objects, or archaeological sites. The way this program operates and functions is once the bonding amount is established in the budget and the commission knows how much money is available, they will then solicit for the grants and then review those lists through a public process and a competitive grant process in order to do their final awards. Yeah, I would also kind of like to point out on this slide that, while these are also grants that are essential for historic preservation, that there really is a community revitalization component to this. And there's 3 pictures to the right on this slide. The first one on the top is the La Concha building down in Las Vegas. There was a grant awarded this last biennium to repair water damage. And this building is used as the visitor center for the Neon Museum. So there's the public space. The other 2 pictures are before and afters of the El Rancho Hotel in Carlin in Elko County. Now, the El Rancho Hotel was severely damaged in the earthquake that was about 10 years ago, I believe. And this program gave a grant to Carlin and the El Rancho Hotel to basically get it up and running and so that people can inhabit it again. And it's now being used as a community space where people can meet and gather. So these projects, they protect our resources, but they also have an element of community revitalization and community engagement. In the recommended budget, there's $4 million for this program. Now, this is an eye chart, and I won't go over all of these projects, but I wanted to give you all an idea of exactly, the breadth of these grants. So this was the award of the last biennium. The last biennium, the council or the commission was awarded $3 million. And they were able to fund about 25 different projects across 12 to 14 counties. I haven't counted them all up. But it does give you an idea that these grants, they go out, they protect our resources, they create community spaces, and it touches all corners of the state. The third program is our Lake Tahoe Environmental Improvement Program. For those of you that have been on the interim committees with the oversight of the TRPA and the Marlette system, you've heard a lot about the Environmental Improvement Program. This is administered by our Nevada Division of State Lands and our Nevada Tahoe Resource Team. This EIP program is a commitment between the 2 states, Nevada and California, federal government, local governments, and private sector. There have been MOUs between the two states and the federal agencies, basically committing everybody to do their share for the restoration work needed at Lake Tahoe. And over the years, the program was first established in '99. And over the years, if you look at EIP investments, the latest in the EIP tracker shows that Nevada's investment to the EIP has been matched at a rate of 15-1 with non-state sources. So we've been able to match and leverage our funds, but also it's just the message that we're all in this together at Lake Tahoe, that it's not anyone's sole responsibility, it is really a shared commitment. The projects that are funded through the EIP program is really a result of what's, the phrase up at Tahoe is epic collaboration. So the land managers, the citizens, the folks engaged, and the stakeholders, they maintain a 5-year priority list of projects. It's on the website laketahoeinvo.org. And that 5-year priority list of projects really sets the roadmap for future funding so that we can make sure we're leveraging our dollars and getting the shovel ready as possible when bonds are sold. The Division of State Lands is part of this program. They provide semi-annual reports to the IFC, and of course they report to the Tahoe Interim Committee, every interim. So in the governor's recommended budget for FY 21 and 23 is $12 million. And those $12 million matches, the projects under that matches the priorities up at Lake Tahoe. For those priorities, there's 5 major buckets. One is water quality improvements. Lake Tahoe is a basin, so all the water flows down to the lake, and there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to occur regarding stormwater improvement, stormwater treatment, and erosion control. We're looking at, in the next biennium, probably 2 grants in Douglas County for them to carry out their stormwater projects, and 1 in Washoe County. In addition, under the $12 million is a significant amount towards forest health and aspen restoration on our state lands, basically at Lake Tahoe, Nevada State Park, and Van Sickle Unit in the southern part of Lake Tahoe. The forest health projects are critical to maintaining not only the health of the forest, but reducing the risk of catastrophic fire. Fire is a reality. We need to manage our forest so that if a fire does occur, the landscape is resilient and it doesn't reach a catastrophic level. In addition, part of our forest health is really helping to protect and restore the aspen stands up in Lake Tahoe, Nevada State Park, particularly around Spooner Lake. We also have money earmarked towards the aquatic invasive species program, so we can monitor against aquatic invasive species, largely Asian clams or zebra mussels and quagga mussels. And then the Spooner Front Country Phase 2 and Van Sickle Bi-State Park Phase 1 are really part of the sustainable recreation program up there. Tahoe continues to have increased popularity and visitation. In many ways, that's great, but it also creates challenges. So the Spooner Front Country, for those of you that don't know, it's the Spooner Lake unit of Nevada State Park is on the southern part of the East Shore Highway 28. There is a corridor management plan signed on by all of the stakeholders, the Forest Service, the state, local governments, to really come up with a plan to manage the East Shore beaches, including Sand Harbor and Hitting Beach, but really make it so that we can start getting away from dependence on single-use vehicles and really get a system in place on the East Shore. Spooner Front Country Phase 2 is part of that amenity on the southern part of the corridor, where there'll be recreation improvements within Spooner Lake State Park, but also there'll eventually be a connection to the entire corridor along the East Shore beaches. And then Van Sickle Bi-State Park, which is in the southern part of Lake Tahoe, it is a bi-state park that we share with California. We do have hiking trails there. What our plan is to make it really to a camping facility and open it up. It's a great location because it is close to the urban area. And again, the goal is to get people up to Lake Tahoe and not be driving around all over the place. So having recreational facilities close to an urban core is highly desirable. And then lastly, we do a lot of wildlife inventory work to make sure that our projects are not detrimental to any wildlife species. And this is the most recent program. This is the Conservation and Recreation Bond Program, Assembly Bill 84 from the last session, 2019. This one's a little bit more challenging being the newest program. So we're still getting our legs under us on this one, but it is really kind of an extension or the next gen from what was called the Q1 program. So as a little refresher, AB 84 had 217.5 million in authority. It also provided funding for a program manager because we don't have an individual dedicated to this program here at the department. Unfortunately, due to necessary budget reductions, the hiring of that program manager has been delayed until January of 2023. The current budget, governor recommended budget, includes $20 million for AB 84 implementation. And a lot of the conversation I heard this morning was how do we make sure projects are shovel ready, or how do we spend bond proceeds expeditiously in order to make sure we're taking advantage of things. So that's what we will be looking at with this $20 million. We're looking to identify projects that can spend funds in 3 years, provide the most benefit, and leveraged against other dollars. And a little more detail on how we're looking at that. I think it's important to note that the legislation for AB 84, has basically 2 buckets. There's bond proceeds that go directly to recipients called out in the legislation, and then there's bond proceeds that are to be carried out through grants and competitive grants. The direct recipients in the legislation are listed on this table. I won't go through all of them, but what's important about the direct recipients is the legislation does not require the development of grant regulations. So we have the processes in place largely from the previous Q1 program on how we can get money to these direct recipients. And as you can see in this table, this is what their allocation is as far as authority in the legislation. There's also the grant recipient side, and these are largely grants to public agencies, local governments, and nonprofit organizations for a variety of different types of conservation projects, and the total amount of authority there is $72.5 million. We were hopeful that we were able to get the regulations in place during this biennium, but absent the funding of the program manager, we have not been able to do that. So looking forward with this 20 million, we have been in contact with a lot of the stakeholders, and this chart shows the stakeholders that are the direct recipients. So working with these agencies, our Division of State Parks have identified about $45 million in projects that are high priority. The highest priority is $3.7 million for the restoration of the stone house at 9 Mile on the Walker River State Park area. Department of Wildlife's identified over $8 million in immediate projects. You heard a little bit about the Cave Lake project. Most of them are regarding dam safety, boating access, and habitat improvements. NDOW has committed that, with $8 million in bond proceeds, they can commit to $16 million in additional funding. The Clark County Wetlands Park has identified $10 million in projects that are really multiple trail projects, habitat improvements, and some infrastructure projects down at the Wetlands Park. And then working with the Springs Preserve for the current upcoming biennium, they've identified $5 million in projects, mostly for the museum there. And then they want to really develop and the Paiute and early inhabitant interpretive area down at the Las Vegas Springs Preserve. And then with museums and railroad museums, Boulder City Railroad Museum, talked with as recently as just yesterday, they still have a immediate need for $1.5 to $2 million to get the design for that facility. Once they get the design, then they can kind of start sketching out the costs for construction. Ely Railroad Museum identified immediate need of $1 million, and this is largely for the freight building to get it upgraded and so that it can be used for year-round use. And then the Caliente Railroad Museum, which is really, this would be under the state lands bucket for grants for private-public partnerships. They've identified an immediate need of $2 million in order to get the design going for that one. But I do want to also point out that, those are the direct recipients that we've been working with directly. I still have not been able to connect with the Las Vegas Valley to Rim Trail, so there could be a need there. But in addition, I do need to point out that the grant recipients like the Nature Conservancy in Washoe County and Trails Associations, They do also have a need, and, you know, they are eligible under AB 84, but again, they're in the bucket where we need to go through the process of developing regulations and then to go through the grant process. Again, the governor recommended budget is $20 million. And there's the information about the program manager, which is something that we need in order to get the regulations developed. And then once we get closer to the end of the session and the bill drafting, we will have to basically fine tune the final amounts based on the most current information that we get from our stakeholders. Again, focused on leveraging dollars, making sure that the projects are ready to go and the bond proceeds can be funded as expeditiously. This slide is just really a summary of the 4 programs. It totals $44 million, and you can see basically the allocation by the different programs. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I really appreciate your patience as I go through this. There's a lot of information, and all of these programs can use a deeper dive, and every project could use a deeper dive. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very, very much for that information. I don't know that I see any hands or any questions. So I really appreciate, Senator Keycaffer, there you go. Jump in there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was Director Lawrence, I was just curious if you had an estimate as to how much of the $12 million in Lake Tahoe EIP funds were going to be used for fuel reduction for forest fire prevention.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Keycaffer, for the question. I think I might phone a friend on that one. I know that Charlie Donahue with the Division of State Lands coordinates that program, and I think they'd be able to give you a more accurate dollar figure, or the most up-to-date dollar figure.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. This is Charlie Donahue. I'm the administrator for the Division of State Lands. And Senator Keycaffer, thank you very much for the question. We have programmed currently approximately $320,000 for forest restoration work of that $12 million. I also wanted to let you know we just recently entered into a cooperative agreement with the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit for federal funding to do additional work, and I believe that's approximately $285,000.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Additional questions? Not seeing any additional questions. I thank you again for all that information. We really do live in an amazing state. So thank you very, very much. And with that, we will leave that discussion and move to the public comment line. So broadcasting, when you're ready, if you will open that line and invite our speakers.
Thank you so much, Chair. We are currently on public comment. If you have recently joined the call and would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 732. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kyle Davis, K-Y-L-E-D-A-V-I-S, and I'm here today on behalf of the Nevada Conservation League. The Nevada Conservation League would like to express our strong support for the bond programs outlined by the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, especially the Lake Tahoe Environmental Improvement Program and the Conservation Bond Program, as authorized by AB 84 of the 2019 legislative session. The committee heard in the presentation some of the history on these programs and the plans for the upcoming biennium. It's important to understand that these bonds are the primary source of funding from the state for proactive on-the-ground conservation. Reauthorizing this program was a top priority of our organization in 2019, and we support the implementation of this program as outlined. We would also ask for the committee to consider providing the funding for the program manager position that is currently slated to be held open until 2023. This position is crucial to many of the grant categories and for creating the regulations that allow for the money to come from these categories and for the opportunities for conservation work that comes from opening these categories up. Thank you for your consideration and time today.
Caller with the last three digits of 034. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Very cool. Hi, my name is Jill Lagan, JILLLAGAN, CEO of the Boulder City Chamber of Commerce in support of the Southern Nevada Railroad Museum project named in the 2019 AB 84. I am grateful to be working on this regional tourism project that will continue to add to all of the amazing tourist opportunities throughout Southern Nevada that highlight history through outdoor adventure and benefits guests to Nevada as well as the citizens of Nevada. We are all in support of the continued collaboration on improvements to the museum and Linear Park with the state, Clark County, and City of Boulder City. This project has many contributors working together by way of in-kind services, donations, and grants from federal, state, and local resources that strengthen and leverage current funds. Thank you for your continued support of wonderful heritage tourism programs throughout the state of Nevada.
Thank you very much.
Caller with the last three digits of 837. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
This is Kent Irvin, KENTERVIN for the Nevada Faculty Alliance. We work to empower NC faculty to be fully engaged in our mission to help our college and university students succeed. Good morning, Chair Don Daraloop, Chair Carlton, and subcommittee members. Yesterday, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, or ARP, with much needed federal funding to Nevada. The legislative budget process needs to anticipate future ARP funds to make the best use of our diminished state revenues until the economy recovers now that vaccines are rolling out. Please note that the ARP has a maintenance of effort requirement. Namely, it requires that states receiving federal funds for K-12 maintain their spending on higher education in fiscal years 2022 and 23 at the same percentage of overall spending as in fiscal years 2017, 18, and 19. The final state budget must meet this proportional maintenance of effort requirement so that Nevada remains eligible for its full federal higher education relief funding, which will partially offset the revenue losses and increased expenses due to COVID-19. Next, in anticipation of your subcommittee's hearing next week on Nevada System of Higher Education budgets, the Nevada Faculty Alliance will be advocating for, first, the change in appropriations bill back language to affirm NC's authority in the future to use budgeted salary funds toward performance pay increases without additional state funding. Second, the caseload growth maintenance item based on weighted student credit hours must be maintained. Enrollments this year, because of COVID, have gone down 3% to 5% system-wide, which is much less than the 19.8% cuts to NC budgets this year and the 12% across the board cuts in GovRec. We fully expect enrollments to rebound in the next academic year, given the good news on vaccines. A change in how WSCH's, the credit hours, are treated would essentially eliminate the funding formula without the full study needed to address any issues with the formula and to avoid unintended consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are no additional callers at this time.
Okay, we will pause for just a minute to see if we gather any additional callers, and then we will do next steps.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. Broadcast standing by. Caller, oops, excuse me.
Go ahead if we have another caller broadcasting.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Trying to ask them to unmute. Caller with the last three digits, 264. If you can hear me, please press *6 to unmute your microphone. Caller with the last three digits, 264. Please press *6 now to unmute your microphone. Thank you, caller. With the last thank you, caller with the last three digits, 264. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. My name is Brittany Walker, BRITTANY-WALKER. I am the acting city attorney for Boulder City, Nevada. I'm calling in to support the bond program and specifically the allocation of $1.5 to $2 million in funding to pay for the design and construction plans for the Nevada State Railroad Museum Visitor Center in Boulder City. The museum is located in Southeast Nevada and is the state's highest attended museum with over 50,000 visitors annually. This was pre-COVID. With the August 2017 opening of I-11, including the new railroad bridge, trains can now leave the museum and connect to Henderson and Las Vegas. To date, over $3 million has been spent towards the museum efforts, including preliminary plans. And for the first time in history, Boulder City submitted a BDR in 2018 because the community believed that the investment in the state's history through this Nevada State Railroad Museum project also presents a unique opportunity for expanding our tourism opportunities. During the 80th session, AB 84 was approved, authorizing the issuance of the state general obligation bonds for various projects, including $30 million to be allocated to the Division of Museums, History, and the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs to support, among other projects, the expansion of the Nevada State Railroad Museum. The project will now include a new 9,700 square foot visitor center, new tracks and boarding platforms, a new linear park that will link several regional projects and initiatives, and a children's learning element. We are very happy to support this project and really thank the committee's time for listening to the presentation and considering supporting this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are no additional callers at this time.
Thank you very much. And with that, with no more public callers, if there are no other closing comments, then we will adjourn and have a nice day. And we'll see most of you tomorrow. Thank you very much.